Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to follow us on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Go subscribe to us on there. Like all of our videos. Leave comments as well. Let us know what you would like to see posted. It really helps us out and supports the channels a lot. Also, if you've been following us for a long time, we've supported several GoFundMes over the past several months. And in continuation of that, all of those will be continued to be linked in the descriptions. And if you don't know about those, all the information can be found below. It'll be linked in the description for all the shows on the listening platform comments, as well as in the comments on YouTube as well in the description. So, but other than that, let's just hop right into the show. We switched up our order than what we were going to normally do. We were going to do Pirates first because they're in season. Steelers in the middle because, let's be honest, those are most popular. And then the Penguins were going to be last because we figured, okay, maybe they'll still be fighting for a playoff spot or maybe have secured a playoff spot this week. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in 17 years, the Pittsburgh Penguins failed to make it to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And for perspective, I had just turned 11 years old. Smitty was still 10. He was going to be turning 11. And we were in 5th grade, the last time that the Penguins had played 82 season games and did not make the postseason. So this is really raw to us. We have no idea how to happen. And it's really raw because literally 5 minutes ago, the Islanders game ended. That clinched that we were not going to be making it. So where do you want to start? Because this is something brand new to us in our history of the show and practically our lives of watching hockey. I mean, granted, they didn't make playoffs for several seasons when we were like really young, like 6, 7, 8. But like, I know both of us weren't really watching hockey to the dedication and as big of a fans as we were then as we are now. So literally our whole hockey life and hockey journey, watching the Penguins and being a fan of the Penguins and their players, we have not really experienced not being in the playoffs ever. And now we experience that for what feels like the first time. And so where should we start with it?
Well, first off, I want to say we are recording on 4/12 day, which is pretty insane.
Oh, that's true. I didn't bring that up.
Yeah, like I was super excited to record this episode tonight, thinking like, we're recording. It just happened to land on the 12th of April, this episode. And it was going to be perfect. And also like looking back to, and I realized this even before Tuesday. So going into Tuesday where the Penguins controlled their own destiny, just had to win their last 2 hockey games against the 2 worst teams in hockey. Things were looking better because of some help that they had gotten from the Capitals. And I guess, I mean, kind of Toronto, that really didn't make a whole lot of difference, but and nothing made a difference because of the Penguins
Capitals
anyway.
Acknowledged it too, though.
Yeah,
that was the funny part, seeing that on Twitter.
Yeah. But it obviously sucks, but and we're gonna get in more in depth with that aspect of it. So that's why first I just want to like appreciate the run that this team just had. Making the playoffs for as long as they did. Like you said, 10 and 11 years old, the last time that we're talking about this team not making the playoffs, and here we are doing this podcast for over 5. Actually, this summer's gonna be 6 years. So they've obviously made the playoffs every year that we've done this show, and well before that. Like you said, most of my hockey watching life, and hockey was my first sport that I really like fell in love with because of my dad playing hockey. So yeah, I mean, this is a tough one as we sit here recording tonight to think about them not being in the playoffs. We talked about it, weeks leading up to this point where we could tell like this team wasn't a contender. I mean, it seemed that way for most of the season, but you just thought like, maybe a couple months ago, I could have talked myself into them winning a playoff series just on the back of Sid. But, as we got closer down the stretch here, it became very clear, like if they sneak into the playoffs, maybe they steal one from somebody, but really it just became like, we talked about it being a loser's mentality, just extend the playoff streak. Like that's the only thing that we were worried about happening this season. And unfortunately, they weren't able to do that after a loss to the Blackhawks, of all teams to, have your playoff streak ended by. And it seems like poetic that it was the Islanders doing it tonight on the backs of 3 goals from Brock Nelson and Anders Lee. I mean, Penguin killers through and through. And even when they're not playing the Penguins, they are ending their season. So, first, I wanted to take a minute to just appreciate the run that this core has had. And, those guys still did everything in their power to try to will this team to the playoffs. Unfortunately, goaltending, coaching, bottom six mismanagement, a lot of bad play on the blue line as well. It wasn't enough. And they're going to play their final game tomorrow night, or today, I guess, by the time you guys are listening to this, on Thursday. And then that's it. 82 game regular season, no playoff this season. Really just weird to even hear those words come out of my mouth. The fact that the Penguins just aren't going to be in the playoffs. I'm still interested in watching playoff hockey, but man, does it have a weird feeling. Even though they've been bounced in the first round, so many consecutive seasons, the fact that they're not even like part of the dance is just so weird to me.
It is very weird. Like we've said several times, it's been a long, long time since this has been the case, and I feel like I should acknowledge, and I did a couple shows ago, that this is, I don't know if historical is the right word, probably not, but it's notable for sports in general and sports across this country and across North America, because the Pittsburgh Penguins had the longest active playoff streak amongst all North American sports. And now that streak is over. I don't even know what the second place team is.
I think it's like 10. I think it's like 10 years.
10 years. So it was 16 or 17 years with the Penguins. The fact that they were able to keep it that long and across every single sport, they held that and continuously held it. And it didn't even seem like it was a threat to even be broken anytime soon. The fact that we're talking about that is the case. I mean, you had the Penguins finishing second in the division. I had them finishing third, but even at second and third, those were comfortable playoff spots. And the fact that they're not even making it is just so shocking and surprising. But like you were saying, the fact that we were able to have such a long run out of this core, and we got 3 Stanley Cups within that run, multiple deep runs as well. I think that Penguins fans, even though it's over, shouldn't take what we had, and still have. Sidney Crosby, Evgeni Malkin, Chris Letang, those guys had great seasons. We don't know what the next couple seasons will hold, but as far as what it is right now and what it has been for the past a decade and a half, really, I think that Penguin fans should really appreciate the run that these guys have put together. And then the fact that this trio has stuck around for so long and continued to produce the way that they have and have carried this team to multiple postseason runs. I think it's a credit to them. It's a credit to the Penguins organization. And this year they just weren't able to get it done. Yeah. And you mentioned the problems. The team was not very constructed well. The bottom six, lack of scoring, the defense at times seemed pretty good, but then they suffered a lot of injuries, and there were a few players that just didn't really play that well individually, and the goaltending was a huge issue. This team has a lot of problems moving forward. We've talked about several individual guys throughout this season. Keys like Brian Dumoulin, Tristan Jarry, Jeff Carter, Mikhail Granlund, but as a whole, I tweeted this out last night, and in the entire Penguins organization, now granted, I don't know all of like the scouts, analysts, and vaccine people, but I'm talking just players, coaching, management, the people that are in the know that I know work for the Penguins. There are only like 5 or 6 names that I really care if on the team next year, and outside of that, I don't really care if anybody is replaced besides those 6 names. And that's Sidney Crosby, Evgeni Malkin, Jake Gensel, Ricard Raquel, Chris Letang, and Marcus Pettersson. 6 guys. Outside of that, any player, any coach, any management, I don't care. You can kick rocks, hit the door. There's definitely some of you that I for sure want gone, and then the others that I for sure don't want gone, or that I don't necessarily want gone, take. But give or take, it's fine. I don't care.
Like a Ryan Poehling.
6 guys, Ryan Poehling. What that doesn't move the needle whatsoever. I don't care if he's gone. But and that's speaking of like Mike Sullivan, the head coach too. And I have come to the defense of Mike Sullivan a lot over the past several seasons, including this season a lot. And now, do I think that he should be fired? I don't know. But I think you could convince me that he should be fired. And a lot of that has to do with playing into his management of the team. And I understand the famous quote from this season was, "Our team is our team." His team was his team. But some of the deployment that he had with his team, some of the line pairings he had with his team, putting out certain lines and certain defensive pairings in critical situations in the game, those to me are the key tell signs that he didn't know what he was doing with this team, or at least from my perspective, what I think should be the best lines or the best pairings that should be on the ice. I'm very questionable at a lot of the decisions that he made throughout the season. And, they haven't won a playoff series since 2018. And I know that's a hard thing to hold against a coach when there's been specific things that we've kind of pointed at for a lot of the losses within those playoff series. But, eventually something's got to give. And if Mike Sullivan was one of the things that had to give this offseason, I don't know that I'd be that upset as it now as I was or would have been at the beginning of this season, looking at the journey that we had for this 2022 season.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it so often, but I think the most frustrating thing to me is if they would have, if Crosby, Gino Letang fall off a cliff this season, and that's the reason they missed the playoffs, so be it. You went down with a sinking ship that has gotten you all the success that you've had over the last 2 decades. I think that it would still have been the right thing to bring those guys back, but they validated those contract extensions with what they did this season. They made those look good. And same with Rickard Rakell, who had his, maybe second best career season this year with the Penguins. So, if those guys don't perform and that's the reason they missed the playoffs, fine. I would have rather have had that be the case. But with those guys having the seasons they've had, being relatively healthy too, and then to not make the playoffs and then seeing why they didn't make the playoffs, that's why it's harder to stomach. And, to your point about changes, I think, that was really, one of the real big topics to talk about. One of the very few topics that I put on here, just because I knew a lot of this was just going to be off the cuff anyway. It was just going to be raw emotional talk about the team and the state of things, given that, again, missing the playoffs for the first time really in since we've actually enjoyed watching hockey and know what's going on fully. But yeah, I think when I'm looking at what are the potential changes, everybody, obviously the first thing is Ron Hextall, GM at the top. But I want to ask you realistically, so we can say whatever we want to happen or whatever we think should happen with this team. But what changes do we think actually are going to be made? First and foremost, is it a foregone conclusion in your mind that Ron Hextall is going to be fired? Or is there still have we opened up our minds to the possibility that he's not going to be?
I haven't opened up my mind to that yet. I haven't pulled my Matt Canada take on Ron Hextall yet. That he's going to be back for next season. I genuinely think that this was the nail in the coffin for Ron Hextall. And I think there was a good argument against it, even if they did make the playoffs, that he should be gone. And we made that argument over this season throughout these different shows that we had of examples of why we think that he should be. And I think that the Mikael Granlund trade should be the final move that he did outside of moving up and down Alex Nylander a million times. But as far as transactional trades go, that Mikael Granlund trade, for how bad as it turned out to be, that mixed with not even making the playoffs should be the nail in the coffin for Ron Hextall. I genuinely believe that. And because I think the mountain of bad severely outweighs the little good that Hextall has done in his tenure as the Penguins GM, because we've named the good. The trade for Jeff Carter, trading for Rickard Rakell, extending Rakell, and granted the years, that's iffy, but at least right now that extension looks good. And that's about where it stops for the good. And then you have this mountain of bad. And I just feel it's a foregone conclusion to me that he's going to be gone. And not that the fan base speaks for the ownership and the team, but I mean, you have during this game against the Blackhawks in the third period, fire Hextall chants are breaking out. And I feel that that's not a good sign.
You say they don't speak for how ownership feels, but at the same time, that's where your revenue is coming from. I mean, a good portion
Yeah.
of your revenue. Obviously,
Right.
like people watching on TV and stuff. But yeah, when you have people in the arena chanting that, they're sending a message. They can't
Yeah.
be ignoring that.
Exactly. And so I think when you just look at his tenure as a Penguin GM and look at the moves, especially the recent ones that have taken place, I don't see there's a way that they could reasonably explain to themselves or reason with themselves why they should even bring him back. And I think he has to be
They
gone.
didn't hire him either. Like, I mean, I think that's the big thing for me is they have no reason to really plant their flag with this guy. Like, it's not the GM that they hired. So they can move on. I mean, again, we weren't in that room, but from all accounts, he didn't do very well in his interview with them last year when they asked for his plan for the future of the team, and he couldn't say what it was. Like, I mean, literally, like I think of the scene in The Office with who's that actor? Dang it. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's like, well, I can't tell you my plan. Once you give me the job, then I'll tell you.
Oh,
my plan.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
no. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But that's seriously like that's the scene that comes to my mind when I think about it. There's no way that Fenway Sports Group, as much as like an absentee owner as they've looked like, and at times it just seems like they're not even in the picture. I think missing the playoffs, missing out on that playoff revenue when you acquired this asset in the Penguins, one for the name that they've built for themselves around hockey with the star power and the recent history that they've, accomplished here. And two, because they're constantly generating extra revenue by making the postseason. Now they didn't do that this year. I think something's up. And I would be very surprised if Ron Hextall is retained. To your point, though, about Mike Sullivan, who we were just talking about, he just got an extension recently. That's the one where it's like anybody can say whether they want him to be or not. I've gotten to the point where I'm kind of like indifferent on it. And by the way, like I think I should preface by saying I think Mike Sullivan is a fantastic hockey coach, but we also know like he's already well outlived the shelf life of most hockey coaches. And as much as we love this core, they're not easy guys to coach, especially like long term. So again, Mike Sullivan, fantastic hockey coach. That doesn't mean that like he can just be here forever and continue to carry on his legacy based off the accomplishments from years and years ago. If they fired him, whatever, I would be kind of worried about who the next guy would be, to be quite honest with you, because I don't know if I trust them hiring a coach.
It's going to be a recycled coach, probably.
That's honestly
how
that's
the
what
NHL works.
But I want to ask you, we kind of talked about Sullivan already, but like, do you think that's even a realistic possibility? Because honestly, I don't think he's going to be fired. Not this year.
I don't think so. I think that they're going to start with the GM because I feel like that's the more obvious one.
What about Burke?
Burke? The problem is I don't even know what Burke does. Like,
yeah,
I genuinely do. I know he has a title, but like, what does he do with the team? I know he has influence in what Ron Hextall was doing as GM, so maybe because of that, he's not brought back. But I genuinely have no clue what goes on with his handling. All I know is he can't tie a tie, or he can tie a tie. He chooses not to tie a tie the correct way. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I have no idea what he does with the club. So to me, that's a. I don't know if it's I'm indifferent. It's I genuinely have no clue because I don't know what he does. And Smitty's just went off.
Don't worry.
At first, I thought the power was going to go out.
No,
that didn't happen. But when it comes to Sullivan, I'm indifferent as well. I don't think that he's going to be fired. I think he did a lot of good with the Penguins, and I feel like a lot of the time, at least for coaches, it takes more than one season of missing the playoffs to be fired. Now, granted, the Penguins haven't experienced this in a long time, so maybe that's different for this organization. But I feel like they're going to give him another shot to kind of build this team, especially with some different players in it, because I feel like that there's a good chance that this team is going to look quite a bit different at the start of the 2023 season. I mean, they have some cap space to work with. But I feel like there could be some trades of guys that are going to be moved out. But I feel like they're going to give him another shot of trying to build this team and coach this team with some new life around it. Now, as far as his staff, though, Reardon
was extended too. And
I don't
promoted.
know why. I look at the power play, and I don't know if what it's going to finish the season as, but I know over the past month I've heard it mentioned that like, oh, they have the seventh best power play at home in the league, but they have like the 31st worst power play, or 31st worst power play away. I mean, overall that averages out to like a 20th to 25th ranked power play in the league. I feel like that's not good enough. Again, if he's not coaching good special teams, because even then the penalty kill started off the year great. They were like number 1, 2, 3 in the rankings, and then that fell off a cliff at times as well. So if he's not coaching good special teams, what's he here for? I feel like there's a better shot that Reardon is gone than Sullivan is gone. I don't know if that's really Sullivan's decision. Like I don't know how that works. If it's like the GM can just fire an assistant, or if it's also up to the head coach what happens with his personnel. But I feel like he's going to be gone. But as far as the coaching staffs, like that's the only one that is like a glaring problem for me. Unless you want to talk about goaltending too. Like I don't, but I don't even know. And I don't know if like the goaltending coach is the issue or our goalies is the issue. But I'm good to just scrap the whole package, every single goaltender and goalie coach that we have at the NHL level, and just be done with it.
Andy Chioda, I believe is his name, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I would start over in that department. And that's the coach and the goalies. I don't know that that's going to happen, but yeah, I don't like. I don't know, but
with one of them.
Another guy that was promoted was Ty Hennis. So I don't know, like, so many guys were just recently promoted or extended or both. Like, the thing though that's interesting, we haven't seen with the past with the ownership group is like FSG's got money to throw around. Do they care about that? Or they might be willing to fire guys that have years of contract still left and just pay more people because they have that type of cash flow. I don't know. Like, until we see it play out, we're not going to know until there's like some type of body of work here. Until that happens, I have to operate under the assumption that's not going to be the case. So I don't know that that's going to happen, but sticking with the players, there could be a decent amount of roster turnover. I wanted to ask you about that too. Like, how different could the Penguins look in 2023? I mean, decent amount of UFAs, really not a ton that I think like we want back. I mean, Jason Zucker's maybe the one, and we've kind of had some conversation about that too. It's like, I definitely would like him back, but I'm weary because of him having a really good season in a contract year for a guy that's had a ton of injuries, over 30 years old. I wouldn't want to hand out another one of those 5 or 6 year deals like we've been doing.
Well, hopefully Ron Hextall's not the GM making that deal, and that wouldn't be the case. He wouldn't want to pull that trigger. But looking at those UFAs that we have, and there's a few RFAs as well that are on the NHL roster right now.
I just realized.
But Jason Zucker is a UFA, like you said, and we've mentioned that several times. Danton Heinen, I don't care if he's back. That's another $1 million off the books.
Yeah.
Josh Archibald, like 900,000.
He outperformed his contract, I think.
He did okay. He did better than expected, but again, it's kind of just one of those who cares if he's back. Ryan Poehling, Alex Nylander, and Drew O'Connor are all RFAs. I feel like at least with Alex Nylander and Drew O'Connor, there's a reason to tenure them and give them extending or qualifying offers. Ryan Poehling, like we kind of mentioned earlier,
Poehling, but
I like him, but it's like,
look at that
I don't
6,
really
you got to
care.
improve it somewhere. You can't bring the same guys back. Like, yeah.
The big one on defense, Brian Dumoulin is going to come off the books.
What I don't know if you saw my reaction.
I can't see
about here.
Yeah, I can't see any way that Brian Dumoulin is retained.
Let me add, okay. Well, that answers my question, but I wanted to bring up something. How much pull do you think Chris Letang has
in Brian Dumoulin coming back?
Mm-hmm.
I think Chris Letang has a decent amount of pull. I feel like he doesn't have the Crosby pull, but he's up there, especially because we're talking about defensemen. But the thing is, I feel like even with Chris Letang's pull and the influence that he could have, if you have any hockey sense, just look at the season that Brian Dumoulin had overall. Now, granted, down the stretch, there were several games that I thought he played pretty decent in. But when you look at the past few seasons, the road that he's been heading down the past like season or two, it just seems like the time is up. He's getting towards his worst years of hockey that are remaining. And so I just feel like there's no reason to bring him back. And so despite Chris Letang's pull, I just don't think that's going to happen. And then the other UFA on the team, well, Nick Bonino's a UFA as well. He might not even play tomorrow. So it's a shame he only got to play 3 games back with the Penguins. RIP Bones Ego. But Tristan Jarry is the other big UFA. And to me, that's the one where these last 2 weeks really confirmed it to me. I don't want him as the starting goaltender moving forward, because not only is he unreliable in the health department and he's so injured all the time. I don't know how many games he's played this year. Let me see. Because as a starting goaltender, I would expect you to start in
probably less than 35.
Well, I don't know if this is counting all the games that he's played in, or it can't be the games he's played in, because it says he's played in 46. Do we really think he's played in 46 games? I mean, maybe that's the case. But I just feel like he missed such a big chunk of the season. Now, granted, 46 games, that's half the season. I don't know. I feel like it kind of got confirmed for me that watching him play and seeing him not even in the lineup for several times throughout the season, that I don't think Tristan Jarry can be the starting goaltender moving forward, because he's unreliable to be available. And he also shows unreliability when he's on the ice as well. There's several times throughout the past couple of weeks, and we're talking about the past couple of weeks, that it is critical to have good goaltending because you're trying to make the playoffs, and he wasn't able to make a save when the team needed it. And so I am kind of out on Tristan Jarry.
They couldn't, obviously, like, they needed to put the puck in the net more against the Blackhawks than they did. I mean, we're talking about Peter freaking Mrazek that they couldn't beat. But at the same time, they asked Tristan Jarry to do so little in that game, and he still gave up 3. I mean, the Blackhawks didn't look dangerous really at any point in that game, and they still got 3 past them. The biggest thing that he has going for him in terms of his potential return to the Penguins is just really a question: is the grass greener, or the uncertainty and the market? It's really not about Tristan himself. It's just about, can the Penguins find another option, because the goalie market stinks. There's not many guys out there, and at least there's a familiarity level there with him. I wouldn't bring him back, even if it meant there being a huge question mark going into next season with somebody else, because I think the uncertainty is better than what we've seen the certainty with Tristan Jarry be.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I understand that. I would like something new, and I feel like I've just gotten stale on Tristan Jarry and the goaltending in Pittsburgh in general. I would love some new blood.
It's amazing because you look at, gold. Now, I'm not talking about the top end guys, the Vasilevskis, Yusei Saros. Why am I blanking? Igor. I think Ilya Sorokin, who might win the Vezina, has put himself kind of in that conversation too. Hellebuck. I'm not talking about those guys, but goaltending that you can win with isn't that hard to come by. In the Penguins, can't find it. It's almost like the Steelers with off-ball linebacker.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, in a sense, goaltending has really hurt this team for.
Yeah, well, okay, I thought you were saying, and it's kind of devalued around the league.
Well, it is devalued. Yeah. But goaltending in general for this team specifically, 2021, Jarry killed the Penguins playoffs against the Islanders in the first round. 2022. It was Louis Domingue who
but I mean, the expectation really shouldn't have been there. I thought you were going to say it kind of was like a Tristan Jarry redemption tour up until the playoffs, and then he gets hurt.
Yeah, it should have been, and he does get hurt, and that just goes with what I'm saying. He's not available when you need him, and then that's why I said, I don't really have any like names to really throw out right now. But
I think they got
feel
trade
like
for one.
I think they do too. I think they do too. And
Taylor's been saying throw picks at Nashville for UC Saros. What in the world is that going to cost? I don't know, but I like the idea.
I like the idea as well. A couple guys that I would also like the idea of. What's his name? Jeremy Swayman in Boston.
Offer sheet him. I know that it's not, it's not a popular thing. It doesn't happen. I don't care.
Jeremy Swayman in Boston.
Do I look like a guy that's upset that would be upset about making Boston mad?
No. And another guy that I think is a RFA this year. Maybe offer sheet him too, but I don't even know what they're going to plan on doing because they already have another starting goaltender, Mackenzie Blackwood in New Jersey. I would be willing to give him a shot as well. Just because
big. Isn't he like 6'4"?
He's 6'4". That would be new place for him, new blood for us. I would like that a lot because they have Vitek Vanacek
kind of ran away with that. It's supposed to be like a 1A 1B situation, but Vanacek's been that good.
But yeah, I just feel like this team could look very different next year. In goal for starting goal, I feel like Casey DeSmith's not going anywhere. He has the 1 year left on his contract at $1.8 million. I mean, that's a little higher than I would like. But when it comes to being a backup, I can't really complain too much about Casey DeSmith this season, especially when you compare it to what he did last year.
Here's another thing that I'll say about this. I would rather, and I know that it wouldn't go well because the more he plays, the worse he gets. I would rather have Casey DeSmith as the primary starter for one season than give Jarry an extension. Because of what
I would too. Like. I would too.
If it meant swallowing that pill for 1 year and finding somebody else.
No, I agree absolutely. Because what do you do with an extension with Jarry? How long is this extension going to be? What do you do about years? I feel like at times, he's looked like he's worth $5 million a year, but that has been killed by how many games he misses and at times looks terrible and out of place and not being able to give you a save. I can't even begin.
Here's the thing:
think about where to start with a contract.
Even if it's 1 year, you're talking about once again running it back with the same goaltending duo. That's a tough sell to your fan base and probably internally to the team. The players aren't going to say it, but they're going to be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, how many times is this going to sink the ship for us?"
Yeah, no, honestly, I agree with you. I mean, if you are guys like the ones that I mentioned that I want to keep around, like Sid, Malkin, Jake, Letang, what are you thinking whenever what are they thinking? They're like, I carried this team, this sorry team all season. Look at the stat sheet. We carried this team and I got no help in my bottom six. I got no help in net. I got no help from my GM. They'll never say it, but if you're Sidney Crosby, what are you thinking? I feel like we need to break out the Mikey and Big Bob, the what did they call it? The mean Sidney Crosby. It was like a mean Sidney Crosby. I forget what skit they called it.
I don't even know if I'm familiar with that.
I don't know if it's just on Twitter, but I think it was Mikey would tweet out some like different things as like Sidney Crosby's translator for what he actually means whenever he's like saying something, kind of like that Key and Peele speech. Or sketch. But I just feel like you have no confidence whatsoever in that goaltender behind you. And so that's one thing that I think for sure needs to change. Do I think it will change? That's a tough question because of what we've been talking about, how the market looks, the trade value for other goaltenders. But then again, a new GM might think very differently than we are. And Ron Hextall hopefully is not going to be here. But the Penguins, as it stands right now, have projected $20.2 million of cap space going into this offseason. I mean, even though it's not, there's still some bad contracts. That's what I'm saying. And that's why I'll finish what I'm talking about with, I will solidify my stance that unless you're going to use that first round pick to trade, for example, UC Saros or something like that, I am willing to give up the 2023 first round pick to get rid of Mikael Granlund, because at worst, it lets you entertain the idea of bringing back Jason Zucker on some sort of contract. I don't know what that contract looks like in terms of years and money, but at least it lets you entertain the idea. Right now, that idea is basically slammed shut, nailed in the coffin, because you don't have enough money to be able to bring him back and then fill all the other slots throughout the team. But I would definitely be willing to trade away the first round pick for Granlund. And I feel like anybody who isn't on board with that needs to open their eyes, because you just saw what your core did to you this season. They still have it. And I feel like, forget the future right now. You don't even know what that future is going to pan out. Look at Sam Poulin. Don't know when he's going to make the NHL. And I hate to harp on a guy like that, but I'm just using him as an example. He was a first round pick.
It's one of the few first round picks.
He was one of the first few first round picks that we had in 2019. He's still not in the NHL. So you never know if that pick is going to even make it to the NHL. But I know I'd rather have $5 million. So give me the $25.2 million in cap space instead of the $20.2 million in cap space, and attach a first round pick with Mikael Granlund and send him anywhere. I mean, honestly, that might be one of the worst trades I've seen the Penguins do in a long time in terms of what you got productivity from that player.
1 goal, and it came in garbage time against the Flyers in a game that was already out of hand. So, the last thing I want to say is I was just thinking about this in terms of just, once again, speaking to the incredible playoff run this team has gone on. So it was Sid's rookie year, the last time they missed the playoffs, but Gino and Letang weren't in the NHL at that point. So they've never missed the playoffs.
They've never missed the playoffs. Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Here we are.
That's crazy. And I wonder how Sid's going to take it, because I know every year he hangs a picture of the Stanley Cup winner in I
have one thing to ask
in his house.
Still. Losers, again, going back to losers mentality here. Maybe because, they still were productive this year. If there is any type of silver lining, I don't think that they are guys that need to have that competitive fire lit every season. But can you imagine what they're going to come out like next year after missing the playoffs for the first time?
I hope they're pissed. I genuinely do. I know the players are going to be, but I hope the team plays pissed off. It's something that when we think about people having revenge tours and stuff like that, we've never had this type of revenge tour with the Penguins. I mean, I hope that it really lights a fire under them, and that we see another great season from the core, but an even better season from the Penguins.
That's the thing that just keeps getting me is you don't know when that clock's going to strike midnight for those guys. And it might be next year, but it wasn't this year. And you still didn't get to the playoffs.
And that's why I'm willing to move on from that first round pick. I'll go back to that. If they're still, if Malkin and Sid are still point per game players, then over point per game players actually. So
yeah.
But I think currently in the NHL draft, I think we'll be at 14 or 15, I believe. So lottery. You might pull a Philadelphia in the 2017 draft. I think they were at the 15th best odds, and they got the second overall pick.
Yeah.
So, you never know what's going to happen. They'll probably end up with the 15th or 14th pick anyway. But Connor Bedard, I don't know, but you literally just lost to the leader in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, and then you're going to play the new leader because the other one beat you in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes tomorrow night or tonight or yesterday, whenever you end up listening to this podcast. I don't even know if I'm going to watch that game tomorrow. I'll be honest. I don't have interest now. I genuinely don't. I mean, there's nothing to play for. I don't have.
I might watch the Pirates.
This is the dog days of September where there's nothing on in the weekends. Hockey hasn't started. The Pirates are 30 games under 500, and I just don't want to do it. I don't want to watch them. This is game 82. There's nothing to play for. I literally, this is probably my first time I could ever feel like I don't have interest in watching a Penguin game.
Yeah, for me, Cavs playoffs start at 6 and the Bucks play at 7:45 or something like that. So like,
Yeah, it's easy decision to watch the Pirates for me,
yeah.
especially since they're playing with the Cardinals. However, because I live in Oklahoma, I don't know if it's going to be blacked out because St. Louis is close to me. Because the
Oh,
Houston Astros games I couldn't watch on MLB TV. The past
interesting.
3 games because they were blacked out. So I'm wondering if
That's so
those
stupid.
I wonder if those are blacked out too because whenever I lived in Utah for hockey, the Colorado Avalanche and the Las Vegas Golden Knights were blacked out. So anytime we played those 2 teams, we couldn't watch it.
MLB is ridiculous with their blackout restrictions and stuff. But anyways, yeah, that's it as far as the Penguins go. About 40 minutes of talk here on the Penguins. I think, that could be as expected when you think about the magnitude of what just took place with the Penguins missing the playoffs for the first time in a very long time.
Maybe we'll try to get somebody on soon, maybe next week, maybe the next week after that to talk about what they think's going to happen and what did we witness? Can they explain better what we witnessed throughout this 2022-23 season?
Yeah. I just need to know how for like 3 straight years now this team has been in the bottom 5 and finishing despite the talent that they have. All right, but moving on to the Steelers now. I want to ask you if you think anything of this. Pretty random for them to just release Jameer Jones like this out of nowhere. He actually finished last year as their edge 3 because of Malik Reed's lack of productivity. Jameer Jones kind of took over that spot. He'd been a guy that played special teams. They actually just recently gave him a new contract for 2023, and then they release him, 2 weeks before the draft. I don't know if there's a move coming. Jerry Dulac says it's not like an imminent thing with Bud Dupree. I think like a lot of people just were assuming it was when they saw that news. Is this like them saying we're definitely going this route in the draft? But either way, like why make this move now? I mean, where's your head at with this? Because I can't wrap my head around the timing of releasing Jameer Jones on this very random Tuesday or Wednesday.
The only one to me that would have made sense was Bud Dupree. I thought, okay, that's Bud Dupree's music. But I don't see how this makes sense for the draft just because Jameer Jones wasn't like someone that was really completing for a lot of playing time. And granted, it will open up a roster spot for that position, but for guys that I would like to draft at that position in the draft, those are guys that are going to be competing for like starting minutes. So, I don't
way,
see...
why not wait till after the draft and then release it? Like if you really need the spot that bad when you sign this guy to like, you don't have to have 53 guys right at the draft. Like that's the thing.
Right.
So,
right. And I don't know. That's why to me, it's hard to feel like this isn't Bud Dupree, even though Jerry Dulac said that, just because it's written on the wall by this point. We know he was in Pittsburgh for that visit. It just seems like it's written in the stars already. Bud Dupree is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah, like unless there was something that was bad on his physical, I still feel like by the time that we get to, camp, he's going to end up being a Steeler. I was very surprised to see him like kind of roll that out immediately. And like say what you will about Dulac, but like trust me, he is somebody that is certainly more well connected. He has one source that matters above all else. So I don't think he's just throwing stuff against the wall here. Now, if you asked him for like opinionated stuff, yeah, I don't know that he's got like the best actual football mind. But here I will take his opinion to heart and say, okay, nothing is imminent with Bud Dupree. At least at this time. Now, maybe they have the idea that it's going to be, and it's just like not literally right now. But again, then why make this move right now? It's really weird timing.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me. At least in the terms of nothing's happening. Like when it's happened, but if Bud Dupree is not signing and you're doing it a couple weeks before the draft, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just hurting Jameer Jones' feelings at this point.
So maybe, I mean, what it could be, because it sounded like he was just saying nothing is specific. Like there's nothing specific that this is for. Because he said it's not for Bud Dupree or any outside linebacker for that matter, but they're going to need to add an outside linebacker. Oh, well, yeah. But like, so how is that not the imminent move? I don't know. Yeah, why are you just releasing a guy for no reason and then like down the road gonna replace him? Very odd. Unless
It is
something
very
happened
odd.
like away from football with him that we don't know about. It just really random.
It's very random, and I'm gonna keep thinking that spot's for Bud Dupree, unless the physical came back and they just said, "Listen, you're fat now. You can't play." Uh, and I know that's not the only thing that physicals are for. They are for actual like health reasons too. But
Yeah, we know like with him, it would probably have to be something popping up with his knee if he
yeah.
were. Yeah.
So I don't know. Super random, but it's also not a move that's like, I don't care. Sorry, sorry you're cut, but I don't really care.
For every subtraction, there can be an addition as well. Now we talked about them releasing Jameer Jones. They signed another defensive lineman. So like, last week when we talked about the addition of Braden Fajoko, we really like that from a depth perspective. What about a guy like Armin Watts, who they bring in, former 6th round pick? He's been with Minnesota, also with the Chicago Bears. I like it again from a depth perspective, but he's not moving the needle. Like if they still want to add a top tier defensive lineman, I don't think that this is going to make them shy away from it. I do think going back to last week's conversation when you got add a guy like Fajoko who plays in that like one tech spot, that's probably his best spot. I think that could take like a Ika off the board for them, but like a Gervon Dexter, Keanu Benton, those guys could still very much be in play. And I'd say the same thing, after this signing. Like this isn't moving the needle for me enough to the point where I'm saying like, oh, this changes draft needs.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a guy that has some experience. He started in 12 games last year in Minnesota, which I didn't know about. That kind of impressed me. But at the same time, it doesn't really move the needle for being a starter. It's not going to be someone that you expect to be a starter or play some of those snaps when it comes to playing on Sundays. But I think in terms of security at the position, it at least helps with that. With the off chance of injuries and everything like that, you're securing more depth. But I don't think this really changes, at least in terms of strictly defensive tackle. If you're looking at nose tackle, that changed last week, we think, when it comes to the draft. But any defensive tackle that they want to take on their board, I feel like this isn't a move that's going to do so. And I feel like defensive tackle, despite bringing back Ogunjobi and securing some of the depth that you have, like Cam Hayward's still not getting any younger, and I feel like it could still be a big priority in the draft to this team, just because it's a position that you're going to need to help replenish. And I feel like this move isn't necessarily replenishing it. It's kind of just standing pat and more securing the spot for right now. But you're going to want to replenish it with better players, and I don't think this move does it. And I don't think it really changes what the Steelers should do in terms of the position when it comes to the drafts or even throughout free agency. Just because of where he's going to be playing or how much he would be playing.
I'm just looking at his football reference page here. Really wild to me looking at 2021. I don't know if these are just inflated, but he had 5 sacks in 2021. He also had 10 QB hits, 46 combined tackles. I mean, if he would have been he only signed for 1 year in Chicago after that. So obviously, that was in 9 starts too. He played in every game, but just 9 starts, having 5 sacks as like a rotational interior defensive guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened that he only had 1 the following year. And he only has 8 total in his career. So yeah, obviously that's an outlier season. But people were talking about kind of like the pass rush juice he can provide from the inside potentially, and really just 1 year of production there. It'd be interesting. I mean, obviously, yeah, he's not going to have a huge role, but if you're just talking about a guy to come in and play, 15 or so snaps on the inside, I mean, a guy that has had a 5 sack season, I think you could do a lot worse.
One of those sacks came against Pittsburgh. I just went back to look at the game logs.
That Thursday night game.
Yeah. Yeah, I went back to look at the game logs, and one of the last sack of the season that he had came against Pittsburgh. Also had 2 quarterback hits in that game.
Nice. 29-0 at one point that game. Did he get to 30 something nothing? And then we
I don't think it got to
back.
30-something
Okay.
nothing.
All right. Yeah, then
But
almost coming all the way back. That was the
36-28.
Claypool. That was the Claypool game, celebrating the first down with time
Yeah,
running.
that was the. I watched that game at a restaurant called the Italian Village in Murray, Utah, because my aunts and uncles and cousins, we all went to eat there after. This is gonna sound dark, but after my grandpa's viewing, uh, but I had my cousin Austin and I, who is my co-host for the Sports Weekly podcast, BYU football podcast. We had the game up on our phones. I remember that specifically.
This is supposed to be no free ads. Shouting out other podcasts. But and then the last thing I wanted to talk about with the Steelers, this isn't necessarily like news. Like teams are going to talk ahead of the draft anyways. Like we would assume there's going to be conversations with the Steelers and maybe all 31 other teams in terms of moving up, moving down, just getting a gauge of what it would cost if they want to do that. But for some reason, there's been a ton of buzz about the Steelers and Bears. They've already made a trade recently with Ryan Poles. The Chase Claypool trade, I just mentioned him, but for the 32nd overall pick, or what turned into, they wouldn't have known that at the time, but turned into the 32nd overall pick.
Yeah.
There was a bootleg football with Brett Coleman and EJ. EJ is a Bears guy, and he was talking about, he definitely knows for sure the Steelers and Bears have talked about a move where the Steelers would go up to 9 for 17, and obviously additional draft capital would have to be involved. I don't know that like GMs actually looked at that trade value chart and they're like, okay, we got to give them these picks for these picks. Like it's really going to be supply and demand. So if other teams are trying to move up, obviously you're going to have to include more. I will say, just for the sake of conversation, 17 and 49, 4-9 is only 10 points off in terms of that value chart. So pretty even. It makes sense though, because if a guy like, Paris Johnson, who could very well be the first tackle off the board, slides all the way to 9, I have 2 questions here. One, why in the world would the Bears not just stick at that pick and take the guy, Paris Johnson, because they could absolutely use him? And 2, to me, it's going to cost a lot more than just that, because you're going to have a ton of other teams calling, not just Pittsburgh. But if I'm talking about guys that like are going to make me on this live stream jump out of my chair, like Paris Johnson, Christian Gonzalez, if the Steelers trade up for either one of those 2 guys, I got a bar to my left, and I don't know if anything's going to be left on it after the night.
Okay, so I'll go back to the 2 questions that you asked yourself. One,
why
would the Bears not take them? Because they're a poverty franchise who have a mobile quarterback and doesn't believe in protecting them. That's why.
Yeah, like at some point, it's got to be like they just keep acquiring this draft capital and stuff, right? At some point, you got to actually use that to get players.
Yeah, but I mean, they traded down from 1, so I feel like they're easy to convince to trade down from 9.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, if they're up there and they're going to take, and I didn't even think about Christian Gonzalez, to be honest. The only name that came to my mind was Paris Johnson Jr. For trading up to that point. I would love either of those guys. But I feel like
in the Steelers' case, I think it would be Paris. I mentioned Christian because he's the only other guy that I would trade up for like that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Christian Gonzalez is easily the number 1 corner in this draft.
And I feel like Paris is easily the number 1 left
tackle. Number 1 tackle. Yep. And when it comes to capital that you'd have to give up, despite what the program says, it being like 10 points off with, what'd you say, 17 and 49?
17 and 49.
I would feel like you would have to throw in maybe even one of your late round picks this year, and then possibly like a 3rd or 4th next year in a draft to get up to 9. Just because I feel like you don't hold any of the cards in that situation.
Yeah.
You're showing your hand. They know who you want, and it's just supply and demand. You kind of have to pay what they want.
Hear me out on this. 17, 49 in a 3rd next year for 9 in a 5th next year.
I mean, shoot, I'd take it. If that's the pick, if that's for sure what would happen is they would take Paris Johnson Jr., I would do that, because I just feel like that position, that guy is so valuable. He is so valuable in this year's draft. I mean, he's the only one out of the first round tackles that I'm like, I would trade up for. He's a surefire
He's
starter
playing
from
on the
day
left
one.
side. Yep.
And he's playing on the left side. I feel like that is the for sure pick if you were trading up. That's the guy you go get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm comfortable trading away that draft capital. Whether the Steelers are, no idea. But I think that there's a world that could happen. I mean, I've flirted with the idea of trading up with a couple different teams, and trading up all the way to 9 to be able to take him. That I feel like that would be like a dream come true. Just because while I would be open to taking some of these guys, like a DeJuan Jones, like an Anton Harris, like some of these other like tackles around like the 32 or pick 32 range. The only one that I would want to take in the first round, even though 32 should be a first round pick, would be Broderick Jones at 17. But I still think there's higher valuable players at different positions that you could take at 17. The one that you're not going to get any higher value for is Paris Johnson. And I feel like if you have the opportunity to trade up for, and you know that this guy is going to be a for sure starter from day one, you need to do it.
I'll be honest. I said I have like Paris Johnson to me is the only guy I know for sure day one he could play left tackle. Anton Harrison's actually my tackle too, because I don't know that Skaronski's going to play tackle, and Broderick Jones has a crazy ceiling. He's only played 1 year at left tackle at Georgia, and he held up very well in the SEC. But I think the thing with him is sometimes his hands get too far split. His leverage isn't great. He doesn't have a great anchor. There's times where just like technically he's not there. And as a 1 year starter,
I was hoping the Mel Kiper voice was going to break out.
Not yet. I'm saving it for draft night. But I think he's probably a year away from playing like at a high level on the left side of an NFL offensive line. So I would be very worried about, like, I can temper my expectations. I have no idea how a large portion of the Steelers fan base would be if that guy struggles from day one. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know that Tomlin lets him play from day one on the left side like that. So to me, it's Paris Johnson at left tackle at 17, or like, yeah, I mean, if you can get Anton Harrison at 32, I'm cool with that because, like I said, he's my tackle too. I think, even with like there's some concerns about the arm length, though. There was like some mismeasurement there or something at the combine. I think the footwork's really good. It might even be better than Paris's. I don't know that he's going to play on the left side right away. And then everybody else is is really good right tackles. Darnell Wright, right tackle. He's not going to play the left side. Zero chance DeJuan Jones is going to play the left side. Skaronski, don't know if he's going to play tackle at all. Like, you're getting into guys that they kind of have like that defined role for sure. Paris has played 4 spots really well, one of those being left tackle. I think he's a day one left tackle. And for that reason, in this draft class, where I don't even love a good portion of the draft class, everybody's talking about it. I don't know that anybody has even 100 players that they have as draftable grades. Kuiper and McShay were talking about it. They have 7. They think there's only 75 or 80 players in this class that are worth drafting. It's not a good draft class. There's a ton of guys that are good value on day 2. I wish the Steelers didn't even have a first round pick, to be quite honest with you, and they just had like 7 on day 2 because that's where all the value is going to be.
Yeah, no, I can fully understand that. There's a lot of top end guys in round 1, but outside of that, I mean, honestly,
well, that's why. Okay, I should preface by saying because they pick at 17. If you're getting Paris Johnson Jr., 100% sign me up.
Yeah, and what's funny enough is like this quarterback class. I mean, the draft overall last year is probably better, but when you compare quarterback classes, this one like blows last year's out of the water, especially just like the top 2 blows the entire class of last year out of the water.
Where do you think Kenny would be in this year's draft class?
See, to me, it depends on how much you value stability in your quarterback rankings, because obviously, like,
I think he'd be like the Hendon. Like, I really think that he would be QB5, and he would go in the first round.
I think that I think that he would still go in the first round. I think I'd probably still have, I mean, for sure, Young, Stroud, Richardson, just because of the athleticism and upside, he would definitely be ahead of him. And then Will Levis, I feel like just because of his arm and accuracy, would definitely be ahead of him. because
because
he's
I'm
a better
basically
arm.
asking how we know how the NFL feels about those guys with those traits. So I'm not asking you specifically about like where Kenny would be for you. I'm asking with the NFL, and I think it's for sure behind those 4.
No,
I think
I
it's
think
a conversation.
he'd be right after Levis.
Yeah, is it him or Hooker is 5? Basically, is what I'm asking.
I would say he's right after Levis, especially if you're including like if he just transferred his 2021 season over to last year and he's entering the draft and he's a Heisman finalist still and all that jazz. He won the ACC. I feel like that's going to have a boost to it, and so I still think that he'd still behind Levis just because the NFL and their scouts really value big arms, and we see what guys combines and pro days can do with some of these throwing drills and how impressed scouts can be and how much and look at what it did for Zach Wilson. Not that Zach Wilson wasn't going to be the number 2 pick overall in the 2021 draft, but when you look at the throw that he had at his pro day, from then on out, it wasn't even questioned if he was going to be the number 2 pick.
Yeah,
everybody knew it was going to be him.
I think for a while, there was some conversation: is it going to be him or Fields as the second guy off the boards? And then we saw Lance even go before Fields too. So,
and that's how I feel about Levis. Like Levis, big arm, really impressed in the throwing drills, and so that's why I'd still put Kenny behind him. But
he's absolutely shredded too.
Will Levis?
Yeah.
He is. But I was about to ask like where you think some of the what the order of how they get drafted goes, but I guess we could save that for our actual mock drafts that we'll be doing against each other. We'll be doing mock drafts against each other, and so we're gonna. I'm still not sure how the scoring is gonna go, like what the point system will be, but we're gonna do points based off of a first round mock draft that Smitty and I are gonna create, and it's we're gonna do the entire mock, and if we get points for the correct team but wrong spot, correct spot and correct team, if we predict a trade, that'll be a correct points. There's gonna be a point system for all of it, and the winner of that, instead, in past years we've done like a random retweeter. We'll get a jersey, and the winner of this, or I guess the loser of this is what I should be explaining, will have to buy the jersey for whoever wins the first round pick selection this year for the Steelers. So
tell me if this makes sense. I'm setting this up on my phone right now, trying to, as we go through this, talk through it. 1 point for getting a correct player in round 1. So you'll get 1 point for literally everybody that you say gets picked in round 1, regardless of if it's to that team.
Yeah.
Another point for calling a trade. If you have somebody trade up, that the pick doesn't have to be right, but if they trade to that spot, you get a point for that. 3 points.
Now, is it if you're predicting the trade, like just the team that is trading up, or you have to predict who they're trading with?
What spot they're like? So say the Raiders trade to 3.
Because I feel like you should get 1 point for if they trade at all. Okay. And then you get additional points if you trade and you predict who they trade with.
Okay. All right. So 1 point for calling that a team makes a trade.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 points for the right player in a spot. And then 5 points for the right player and right team connected. So the exact correct pick.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So 1 player for a player drafted in the first round. 1 point for a trade, and you get an additional point if you also pick the team, and then 3 players for right team, wrong spot, and then 5 points right team, right spot.
Yes.
Anyway, all of this is to say that we're doing a live show on nights 1 and 2 of the NFL mock draft, but this is going to be for night 1 only. We're not going to do a 3-round mock draft individually, but that would be crazy. But we're going to do round 1, and the loser has to buy whoever wins the jersey, the first round selection, whoever it may be. I'm hoping.
While I was doing that,
Johnson
you might have
jersey.
said, did you say how they're going to win the jersey, though?
I did not.
Okay. So we're going to do it differently this year. In the past, what we've done is you guys predict who's going to be the first round pick. Last year, quite a few people said Kenny Pickett. So not as many as Malik Willis. That could have been even worse, but quite a few people said Kenny Pickett. Then we had to go to rounds 2 and 3 as a tiebreaker. Oddly enough, you guys are good. Somebody had George Pickens and DeMarvin Leal as the second and third round picks. But this year, what we're going to do differently is everybody is going to be Drew Hannes. You're going to send us a video reacting to the Steelers' first-round pick. Whichever one we like the most is going to be the winner. And then whoever loses our mock draft challenge head-to-head is going to buy the person with our favorite reaction video a jersey of that first-round pick. And that's how it's going to work this year.
There you go. But anyway, tune in to those live shows. We are almost 2 weeks away. It's a lot of fun to just hang out. But the chat will be open. Just act like you're watching the draft with us. It will be us, some of our friends. You know.
Yeah, Joe will not
and
be
Drew.
Here.
Oh,
Joe
he won't be. What a loser.
He's got a family wedding, and he's literally like, it's not that day, obviously, but that's the night that he leaves. So he'll be on a plane.
Whatever.
So we got
Drew will be in here.
Sarge, Platts.
Did Platt get off work? Because I thought there was
he'll be
a work
joining
problem.
He'll be joining at some point, regardless.
Okay.
I'm not sure who else because I was talking to Eddie. I think might be going to Jordan's house. She invited me as well. Actually, I might be doing a live. I might do this live from Jordan's because she's having smash burgers and stuff. So she said I could set up there if I really wanted to. I've been thinking about it. I'm tossing the idea back and forth. So that's potentially. I might have a different background, and we might have a live audience. So we'll see if that happens. But either way, yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun. So nights 1 and 2 of the draft, April 27th and 28th. We will be here. You should be here with us. We'll see what the Steelers do.
One last thing to mention about the Steelers, just because it happened today and I'm connected to it, and it makes absolutely no sense to me.
What did Chris Hope do?
No. Chris Hope didn't do anything. Jaron Hall visited with the Steelers today. BYU quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah, unless I think he's going to go higher than round 7, but I do think the Steelers are going to draft a quarterback. I think they're going to draft their backup quarterback.
All right, so here's my
Mitch is going to be the backup, but I'm saying you only got him for 1 year, so
yeah. Well, I think Jaron's going to be taken before they will.
I do too. I think he'll go
because after round 4, you don't have a round 5 or 6 pick. So you'd have to wait till round 7, and I just don't see that happening. Maybe
they move up at some point in day 3.
But anyway, I just feel like that's probably an unlikely possibility. But another shameless plug for the BYU site Vanquish the Foe that I'm writing. I'm going to be creating 3 BYU player mock drafts. So there's a few players that are pretty consistently drafted in mock drafts for BYU players. And my first one's going to come out tomorrow or today when you're listening to it, or yesterday when you're listening to it. But the first one is going to be based on probably the ideal situation for each of the players that I think will be drafted, like what team they would be the best to go to. And then my second one will be the least ideal situation for each of them. And then on Thursday, on the day 1 of the draft, I'm going to release what I think is the actual prediction for where these players are going to go to. There's only 3 players, but I just thought it was a fun idea to talk
Freeland,
about.
Puka Nacua, and Jaron?
Yeah, and I might even throw in one of them a late 7th round pick for a corner they have, Caleb Hayes, just because his RAS score was the 24th highest since they started doing RAS at his pro day.
All the guys the last couple of years just keep blowing those up.
Yeah, specifically, he has a 40-inch vertical and he ran a 4.31 at his pro day. So in the 7th round, and just this is quick reasoning why, and we're over an hour into the show, so who cares? People stop listening at this point. But
not even getting the Pirates talk.
But at that point in the draft, most teams aren't drafting off needs, and they're just drafting off traits that they think they can develop into athletes. So I think someone will look at it. He ran a 4.31 and look at the other traits that he had at his pro day, because I wrote about his pro day, 3 winners from his pro day on that BYU site as well, Vanquish the Foe. And his was, when you compared it to combine, he was consistently in several of the drills in the top 2 to 5 players that would have been at the combine. So I think just purely off athleticism, I think there's a chance that a team could take him just as a flyer, because at that point in the draft, it's unlikely that they make the team anyway. So who cares?
this whole thing has been about the ideal situations for those guys, right? To me, the ideal situation for him, as opposed to going at some point in the 7th round, is go undrafted. You can pick where you go.
Oh, I know. That's the ideal situation.
Yeah.
But I just look at like some of the guys that have been drafted, and I mean I'm talking specifically about BYU in like late 7th round, like Chris Wilcox, who was a corner a couple years ago, who
I
he
know the
got
name. I didn't know he
drafted.
was a BYU guy.
Yeah, if he can get drafted in the 7th round, then I think that Caleb Hayes could as well. Also, Michael Davis from the Chargers, another BYU guy.
Oh, nice. Okay. Anyways, yeah.
If you
nice
knew,
1-2
this is
the
also
draft.
a BYU show.
Yeah. Nice 1-2 of the draft right here at around the 4-1-2. We'll be doing a live show, so excited for that. Also, we're going to be doing a full first round mock draft with some of our friends. We've been doing it for, I think this will be the 4th year that we've done it now. We know Jake Savank will be joining us for sure, and Richie, still waiting to hear back from the other 2 bums. But Donnie's so busy now doing everything that he covers, like every team in Arizona at this point. So don't know if he's going to join, and I haven't heard back from Nate yet. But either way, 4 of us will be here for sure. Probably do that the week of the draft. Last year we did it literally the night before. I went back and watched that. Like, we actually called a good bit of stuff that happened. So I'm not saying. I'm just saying maybe you want to check it out this year if you didn't last year. Let's talk about the Pirates real quick to wrap things up. I say real quick, but I think one of these topics could create some conversation because it sucks. A lot of the reason that you want to watch the 2023 Pittsburgh Pirates is probably because of Oneil Cruz, and his season per se might not be over. We'll see when he's able to return, but he fractured his left ankle in a play at the plate, a collision with a catcher for the White Sox. I literally say a catcher because I don't know who the hell he is. He's some backup bum that was running his mouth afterwards. The play was fine. The play was clean. He didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but then he's chirping Oneil afterwards while he's laying on the ground. Didn't seem very upset or broken up about the injury even afterwards in the locker room. He said he thinks people will just forget about it. No. But anyway, so Oneil's going to miss some significant time, probably about 10 weeks. And huge blow for the team, just for like, the excitement that you have for the year. Pirates fans and baseball fans. I mean, I've seen non-Pirates fans pretty upset about, this injury just because you never know how a guy's going to come back. I mean, you hope Oneil comes back and is as exciting as he has been up to this point. That's, you're hoping that, but you don't know that for sure. And again, just I think the excitement that was kind of built, by the way, 7-5 so far, the Pirates through 4 series, kind of the excitement that's been built up to that point, a lot of that was lost with that injury. And I don't know how you feel about it, but man, it sucked for him. It sucked for the Pirates. There's no like silver lining here to me other than the fact it wasn't season ending.
Yeah. I mean, it said that it was going to be 3 to 4 months before he could return to action. Now, when I hear return to action,
there'll be
to
rehab
to me that means like he's not going to return in 3 to 4 months. He'll probably return in like 5 months, but he'll have to rehab it before and everything like that. But yeah, the only silver lining to me, that at least from the injury standpoint that I see outside of his season's not over, is that it was a broken bone and not anything to do with like ligaments or stuff like that, or even sprains. I feel like a lot of times can be worse than broken bones just because they linger more. Once a broken bone is healed, most often it might change you as a player, but at least for the bone itself, it's not going to linger. It should go back to being normal. Hopefully Oneil Cruz is fine. I mean, you see, he has great defense. That's my main thing that I think that would be affected by this, his ability to get a jump off the ball and the lateral movement side to side. I don't know, because it wasn't, I don't even know, was it technically his ankle or was it his fibula, like the shin bone that broke? I don't know. I thought it said it was his fibula, but I don't know if like a broken ankle is also your fibula, because there's not really technically like an ankle bone. It's just the leg bone getting down into the ankle.
On the phone.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's really no silver lining to it outside of that. It does suck for the Pirates because the momentum that they were gaining, it was contagious, and he was a huge part of that. I mean, for a few of the games, when the bats weren't really going. It seemed like him, Reynolds, and McCutcheon were the only people that were able to keep the offense going at certain times. And so to have that blow come against you, it just sucks, because not only for how good this team could be with him in the lineup, but for what this does to like the fan base as well, and for things that you were wanting to watch. Oneil Cruz is someone to go to the ballpark on a Monday night in May just to go watch, because he is in the lineup. That he's one of those players that attracts people to go to the ball club and ballpark and watch him play. So that, from that standpoint, sucks that he's not going to be in the lineup for the foreseeable future, and probably not until, I would guess, at least the earliest is August at this point. I don't want to like speculate on anything, but I'm just looking at like how long it could take to heal, how long it could take to rehab. I would guess probably August, and who knows what the Pirates are going to be doing at that point. But you did mention they are 7-5, 4 series into the season, which I feel like is way better than all of us probably would have expected. And the series,
I probably would have said like 5-7, like flipped from where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would still call that way better. And just because you look at how the series have gone, you would have liked that first series to at least been flipped, maybe like go 2-1 instead of 1-2 against the Reds. But then when you look at the series that you had against Boston and you swept them, and then the third series against the White Sox, you're able to win 2 out of 3, and then the Astros one, you lost 2 out of 3. But the defending World Series, I was about to say World Cup champions, Argentina, the defending World Series champions, it's really hard for me to complain about the outcome of that series. But I think overall, I think that this team has really showed that they can compete with really any given night and against any team. I look at what they did the other night with the Ji-Hwan Bae walk-off. Ji-Man Choi got his first home run as a Pirate. That was a fun game against the Astros. I think that this is what we've asked for, is a team that's willing to compete and really just give it their all and have fun when they're playing baseball. And it's contagious as a fan to watch that. I mean, I watched the tweet that the Pirates put out of the Ji-Hwan Bae walk-off in the Korean announcer. And I'm like, that is so much fun. Like when I hear that, it's like I just started laughing because like this is just fun. Like to me, that's all it is. Because I just think that this team, it has been a lot of fun to start the season. So there's not much more I can ask for. The fact that they're 7-5, I think that's a tribute to how they've been performing.
I would have thought that I changed my mind. I would have thought they were to be 4-8, because I would have given them 2 wins against the Reds, 1 win in each of the Red Sox and White Sox series, and getting swept by the Astros. So, yeah, they are doing significantly better than I would have expected through 4 series.
So 7-5, that's pretty good. Now they play the Cardinals, which I should be worried about, but are the Cardinals still in last place in the Central? They were going into today, so I don't know if they still are. But that's another game.
They're 5-7. The Reds are 4-7.
Okay. Anyway, despite the record, that's still going to be a tough match.
Yeah, I think if you split there
in St. Louis. But I'm excited to see how they do, because that's going to be your top-notch competition, and at least what you would expect for the division. So I think it could be fun, but the thing that really sucks, and what we've been talking about to start the Pirates segment, is just not having Oneil Cruz being there. That's just going to be a real damper on, I think, more specifically the offense. I think they'll be able to get some good enough defense from players that it won't be a significant drop off from Cruz. But the bat, I think, is what you're going to miss the most. And I feel like that's an obvious answer, but I feel like it has to be said. Like, this is a guy that we were expecting to hit several home runs, several RBIs, and be one of the main contributors to this offense. And now you're not going to have him for the majority of the season. So that's a hurt that I feel like is going to have to be made up by a contribution from several players throughout the lineup, and not just like 1 or 2 significant players. You're going to have to get that. You're going to have to replace that, kind of like the Moneyball aspect. We need 3 guys with an on-base percentage of 360. I'm not asking for 360, but we need several guys, especially on the bottom half of our lineup, that are going to be batting more consistently and getting more contribution into the offense more consistently.
Yeah, I mentioned. Well, you mentioned G1. He's gonna be a big part of that. I think Rodolfo Castro is gonna have to take on quite a bit of that work as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You're not replacing Oneil, but what they do to try to combat that loss will be interesting. Unfortunately, the injury talk will just continue on here because the last two guys to bring up here, JT Brubaker, we knew it was heading this direction. Unfortunately, Tommy John. So we mentioned Oneil Cruz's season isn't over. Brubaker's is over before he even gets started. And probably wouldn't expect to see him on the mound for the Pirates until, June or July of next season at this point with the way that these things go. So very unfortunate for him. I actually sent him a message today and was just talking to him on Instagram for a little bit. I'm happy that like his spirits are still so high, especially like this is kind of a like the point that he's at in his career too. I think is what really sucks. Like this is gonna be I'm not gonna bet against the guy by any means, especially like, one of the first 10 guys to have our Trust the Buck and Process shirt. He's a really cool dude. It's just like we talked about how common Tommy John surgery has become, but it's like because it's this point in his career, it's gonna be tougher.
Mm-hmm.
I will just tie it in with the next show we're gonna talk about. Another one of our guys, Mike Burrows. Who knows where this one's heading because they both got second opinions. We got the news about Brubaker today, the day of recording this. We don't know what exactly is going on with Burrows, but he left with forearm tightness. He was getting a second opinion about his elbow. You just don't like to hear those words for pitchers being thrown around in today's age. But what I was getting at there is tying the two together. Burrows is still at that point where it's like, if he has to have that, it sucks. But it's so much of a commonplace now where so many guys get it. I don't have as much concern about him getting back to being the same type of pitcher. With Brubaker, I think it's a different conversation just because of where he's at in his career.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this hurts Brubaker more than it would Burrows, but overall, from a Pirates perspective, it sucks because Brubaker was somebody that you're looking at his expectation to be in that starting rotation, and then Burrows was
especially
somebody
with Hill and Vince Velasquez struggling the way they have so far out of the gate. Like Brubaker would be a nice guy to have right now.
Yeah, Rich Hill and Vince Velasquez. Oh man, they can go off with the Pirates people or the Penguins.
And Roanzi had one really bad start just this last series against the Astros. Like Brubaker, obviously he's not going to light the world on fire. He's not a flashy guy, but like you can count on him to go give you 5 innings, maybe 2-3 runs. Like it's what you're getting when he takes the mound.
It's consistent. Most of the time, it's consistent when he goes out there.
Yeah.
So that sucks from that perspective that you're going to lose somebody that you thought would be in your rotation. And then Mike Burrows is somebody you thought might be able to take a spot in that rotation. And depending on what the second opinion says, maybe that's shut down for the rest of the year as well, which would really be a blow to the pitching, which overall that I feel like that's been the Achilles heel for the Pirates so far is that starting pitching. And specifically the names that we had mentioned so far. Oviedo, Mitch Keller, they've given some pretty good starts. Rowanzi had one decent start and then another pretty bad start. But then Rich Hill, I feel like I don't know if it's his age is showing, but
I did think he was okay against the Astros. I think a lot of it honestly was more luck than anything. I mean, he didn't strike out a single batter, and he still only gave up 2 runs somehow.
Yeah,
in that game, against that Astros lineup.
Yeah. I think back to the home opener though against the White Sox. You were there. At one point, the Pirates were losing 5-1.
Yeah,
and I feel like that gets lost in how that game ended up. But Rich Hill did not have a good start in that game, and it seemed like he was just hanging things over the plate. And like I said, I don't know if that's just because he has a 42-year-old arm and it doesn't have the same movement, same juice that it had before. I mean, his fastball seems like it's going like 89 miles per hour.
It is. Tops out at 88.
Yeah. So it's not something ideal. And then Vince Velasquez
70 at the top of the zone, which is what Rich has done a lot so far.
Yeah. And then Vince Velasquez, I just feel like he's kind of been a disappointment from what we expected he could have started out as a starter. I mean, you get a shot to be in the rotation.
Well, coming off the spring that he had, he was really good in spring. So
yeah, it's just he has had no consistency turnover from that spring ball whatsoever from his starts. It's almost like I'm hoping he doesn't give up more than 4 or 5 runs, because I question whether the Pirates can come back from that whenever he takes the mound, which is disappointing. And so the fact that Brubaker and Burrows could be having these injuries and season-ending injuries going into next season, that's going to really hurt the Pirates from what has been the worst part of the team so far in the 2023 season.
Well, I mentioned like Burrows was my guy. Obviously, like I thought he was going to be the Pirates pitcher of the year this year. I said that on the episode we did right before the season started. So yeah, I mean that's a massive loss to me because it leaves the pipeline so thin. Luis Ortiz obviously can be called up at any point, dropped into the rotation and be their second or third best arm probably. But beyond him, it's like, man, is Quinn Priester ready to take that jump? Because after Ortiz,
another one of our guys, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, after Ortiz, he's next in line, in my opinion. I don't know who else down there you're looking at as like this guy could be part of the rotation, but to me, it's Ortiz then Priester, especially with Burrows out of the picture.
And that's why I think the Pirates are kind of in a pickle where they just kind of have to eat it with the guys that they have for right now, because I don't know if Quinn Priester is ready to come up. And even if he is, unless the Pirates get in an injury situation where they need to bring him up, we kind of know how they operate. They're probably not going to bring up a guy until after June anyway. So
yeah,
they're not going to
probably see some guy that's just like, I don't even know who's down there in Indy. Right? Oh, well, another one of our guys. I don't even know if they're utilizing him in the same way or how the organization feels about him, but Cody Bolton, who missed a year.
Yeah, I mean maybe that's the case.
Yeah, because I would think it's got to be kind of now or never for him.
Yeah, because something with the pitching needs to change, though. That's a certain. If it's not from the guys that are in the rotation right now, turning it around and putting out better starts, then you're going to need to see some new faces in the rotation, because that's the thing that's been kind of hurting the Pirates, is when those guys start, you're kind of hoping that the offense is going to be clicking that night so they can outscore the opposition. And that's not a good way to win baseball games.
Cody Bolton.
Another guy that's down in AAA with the Oneil Cruz injury. Do you think Tucupita Marcano comes up to the MLB club anytime soon?
Yeah, I honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was him over Mark Mathias. But I think Tuke has got a shot to be like the next guy to come up. I'm looking at the Indians roster right now, though. Yeah, I mean, it would have to be
that gives a lot of vote of confidence.
I don't know who their starting rotation is down there, but yeah, to me, like after Ortiz, it probably is Cody Bolton. Tyler Chatwood's down there right now. He has some starting experience. He's injured though right now.
Yeah.
I'm looking at position players too, just because you brought up Tuke. Chris Owings is down. He's got MLB experience. He was brought in on a invite in spring training. I think he would maybe. Miguel Andujar's down there.
Forgot he even existed.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know who's next in waiting, but really I think it is. You got to look at the pitching. I mean, you look at. They're going to need these guys. They're going to need guys from the minor leagues, because every team does every year. Like they're going to use 8+ starters probably this year at some point. Yeah. So I don't know where the arms are coming from.
It's a shame that Moreta can't be a starter, because I love when he pitches.
Yeah, he did get Bregman got him today for a 3-run shot, but yeah, he's a ton of fun. Hopefully he stays good, because it'd be really cool. Also, he was the return on the Kevin Newman deal. So that's why I'm assuming he was so fired up against the Reds originally. It's because it was his old team.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I don't got anything else. So, and this has been a longer episode anyway, thanks to the Penguins consuming 40-ish minutes of the show.
Yeah, this is like a circa 2018 around the 412 episode.
That's fitting, because I saw Herb at opening day for the first time, like since he stepped away from the show in person. So
nice.
That was really cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm jealous that you got to go opening day, by the way. We haven't talked since then.
That was it felt it wasn't a playoff game feel, but it was more than
I wouldn't know.
It was more than any other Pirate game that wasn't a playoff game. I
Okay.
think that's the best way to put it.
Because the closest games to me that I've experienced that have, I guess, playoff atmosphere were in 2015. It was the series against the Cardinals right before the break. I was at 3 of the 4 games. I was at the what was it? The Thursday night game, and I was at the Saturday and Sunday game. One of the only 2 sporting events I've been to on a Sunday was the second comeback in that series that the Pirates had over the Cardinals. The night before on Saturday, that was that iconic Kutch home run with Greg Brown losing his mind, and then was Polanco, I believe. Yeah.
Yep. With Pompey Annie right in the background of the shot of Polanco walking off.
Yeah, so that is the only, I guess, the closest I felt to like playoff baseball was that atmosphere. But I guess I'll close out the show with this. What was it like with Kutch coming up to bat for the first time back as a Pirate? From a fan perspective, because videos can only do so much whenever you're living in Oklahoma. So what was it like actually being in the stadium?
Emotional, honestly. I think that, they really did a good job. I think everybody did a great job of capturing the moment. You could tell that he was emotional, like he stepped out, they gave him that, which, again,
shout out to everybody
handled
that.
Yeah, everybody handled the situation really well. They were aware of what was going on, thank God. And you could see that he got emotional. I think everybody in there was kind of emotional. I don't think that, like, if you are outside of Pittsburgh, I think on a national level, people kind of understand how much Andrew McCutchen means to this city. But because of Pirates baseball meaning so little in recent memory, it's like, it's hard for people to understand that any baseball player that's played here could mean as much as that guy does to this city. And for him to, want to come home, him taking the initiative, making the phone call, and coming back here to likely finish out his career. A lot of people thought that moment would never happen. So to be able to get that opportunity with him back, we've obviously had him come back to PNC Park as a visitor and gotten to, show our appreciation, but to see him back in that Pittsburgh Pirates black wearing the number 2022, it's a moment that I don't think anybody thought would happen. So yeah, it was a very emotional moment. There were some people that were recording it and stuff like that. I was just staring at they got a new scoreboard there. I'm sure you've seen at least
I have
video or picture of it. It's beautiful, by the way. I was just staring at him on the scoreboard because I couldn't, obviously I wouldn't have a good enough view of him from left field. So I'm just staring at that board the whole time. And when I saw that he got emotional, I got emotional. And then I start to look around the ballpark and everybody's just kind of the exact same way. And I don't think anybody wanted to stop clapping. I think if they let us, that at bat just would have never taken place. He would have just stood there the entire time.
It seemed like an awesome moment. I was at work when it happened, and I'll be honest, I got emotional watching that, which I'm a sap anyway. I get emotional over easy things like that. So
this show has seen me cry far too often. So
yeah. But when it comes to sports, something like that, I remember whenever, and this was not even the same thing because he was in a different team, but whenever I went to the game that Fleury made his comeback, his first game as a Golden Knight, I was there and I was crying because it's just the emotions I had for that player. It was the same thing I have for Kutch. And honestly, probably even more so for Kutch. And so I was working, and I had to. When he went up to bat, I stepped into our back room just so I could focus only on that, and just because I didn't want to miss any of it because I knew how special that was going to be, and it just reminds me of any of those sports moments, like Ben's last game, Fleury coming back. I mean, Kutch being able to come back as a Pirate and be able to soak in that moment. Also, shout out to Maria McCutchen for making him get on the phone with Bob Nutting. None of this would be possible without the fellow Yinzer Maria. So, that was such an awesome moment. And I feel like not only did it was great because not only did that moment, we soaked it up and everything, but he also got a hit on the first pitch. He didn't need to hit a home run for it to be great.
Opposite way too. I mean, that's
kind of hit, and that would have been great. He had 3 hits on the day. And he's been a productive player throughout these first 12 games of the season. As a Pirate fan, I don't think we could have asked for anything more than what we've gotten from Andrew McCutchen right now. And it's been so much fun because I talked about before the season that it didn't even matter what his slash line was. Pirates fans are just going to be happy that he's back in their uniform. But the fact that he's being able to be a productive player to this team even just adds more to how special it is and how special of a season that the Pirates could have and are having currently right now, even just 12 games in. So it's so awesome. And yeah, I just wanted to ask you about that moment because it just seemed like PNC Park exploded with just raw emotion. And you could tell when on TV, like, he was trying not to cry, and I know he mentioned that after the game and everything. Like, you could tell he was trying not to cry because he's like, I have to face a pitcher next. I shouldn't be crying right now. But
I think
awesome.
that's it's just when you see the impact. I mean, that's all we can do as we go through life is try to touch people and impact lives so that when we're gone, we leave a lasting impression. And to be able to leave such an impression that you can see it take place in front of you while you're still here, how can you not get emotional? I mean, and we're talking about something that was created literally just through sports. I mean, obviously great impact on the community as well, but really making his mark on bringing back a baseball team to a city that had been starving for a good baseball team for so long. So, yeah, I mean, shout out to Andrew McCutchen. His slash line this year might be like 150 with a 500 on base percentage. I don't know he's just slug, but he's gonna like ridiculous on base percentage. It's just that's his calling card. That's why his game has aged so well. Like, he's always going to be productive offensively because the dude just gets on base, regardless of if he hits for a high average or not. He's got such great plate discipline and such an eye for the strike zone. He knows the strike zone way better than any umpire in the league. That he's going to draw so many walks. So, but yeah, really cool moment. As cool of a moment that I can remember. Right up there. Like, obviously, I was at Ben's last game. I wasn't at when Fleury returned, but it's as cool of a singular moment. Not obviously talked about the entire game itself. It was a good game, but one of the best singular moments that I've witnessed in sports that I've actually been there for. And hopefully, this team creates a lot of memories with him on the team. I think that obviously the Oneil Cruz loss hurts, but we'll see. We'll see how things play out. I think that, because of guys like McCutchen, they got a strong enough, nucleus and group within that room to not, totally lose sight of what they want to accomplish in 2023, even without Oneil.
The roster's not as weak as it was last year. So there's still hope that
they've won so many games already this year that last year's team loses. Like, they would be ahead, but they would blow it down the stretch just because, like, they don't have the experience and all these other things. But when you have guys like Andrew McCutchen in the clubhouse, Carlos Santana, G-Man Choi has started to find the bat the last, couple games, that series against the Astros. When you have guys like that in the clubhouse that have been there and done that, you're going to win some games that a previous season you would lose. So we've already kind of seen that play out this year.
Yep. Man,
that will do it.
40 minutes almost.
Yeah. So we're going to get out of here now. I want to go to sleep, so we're going to get going. But Tyler mentioned at the beginning of the show that there are a ton of GoFundMes that are going to be in the description of the show. The links to all those will be down there. One thing I want to mention, because I can't put specifically the stuff for this, like I can't put a link to it. There's not like a digital flyer or anything like that. Is the Dalton Keene Memorial Golf Outing that's going to be held at Blackhawk Golf Course on May 13th. Actually, a month from the time that you guys are probably watching or listening to this at 2 p.m. I got to ask, I don't know if you can still register. I'm just going to be upfront about this right now. I don't know that you can still register for this, but it was, we'll see. So get in contact with me and I'll have an answer for you then. But it was $100 per player. That includes playing golf, also your drink and food for the tournament itself. All the proceeds are going to be split 50-50 between the Highmark Caring Place in Pittsburgh and the Isla Keene Fund. The Isla Keene Fund, that is one of the links that we have there for a GoFundMe. Great cause. Get in touch with me if you want to be a part of it. I will be there, not golfing. We've talked about it regularly on this show. But I will be in attendance for the event. So come hang out if you are not going to golf. Still be a great time and you're supporting a great cause. Other than that, be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, wherever you are listening or watching. Well, the only place you'd be watching is YouTube. Wherever you're listening to this, if it's not YouTube, also subscribe there. Leave us a 5-star review. Hit the like down there right below. I'm guessing Tyler, I think, hit that notification bell as well. And then follow us on all this stuff that's scrolling across the bottom if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, it says @around the412 on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and like us on Facebook for whatever reason if you're on Facebook. Other than that, for Smitty, for Tyler, we'll talk about some sports stuff next week, I guess. We won't have any Penguin games to talk about, but we'll talk to you guys next week. Until then, bye.